Good morning, everyone. How are we doing today? How are we doing today? All right, that's not going to work. That was too far over to that side. Nope. There we go. All right, that's better. All right. How are we doing on this fine Wednesday out there in the world? Last night wasn't too terribly bad. Went to work. It was a balmy 66 degrees. Work went okay. Rather okay, actually. And now we're back. We're home. Made it again. And it's time to talk some sports. So today, a little bit later on, we're going to be playing Fire, Water, and Ice, looking at some of the head coaches that potentially could be on the hot seat. We're actually going to do this today and tomorrow as well, as we kind of fill out Wednesday and Thursday this week. We got Hawks Locks for the week that we do today, the Fantasy Deep Dive. plenty to go on, but I want to start with this. In most professional sports, when playoff time comes around, the best teams normally rise to the top. It's true in basketball, football, hockey somewhat. But with baseball, it's normally a lot harder because there's a lot more variables. In baseball, the variables of this sport really make the underdog kind of just that team that can get there. You don't have to be the favorite. Money helps, but how many World Series have the Yankees actually won when spending all of that money? Moneyball. An entire movie was made off of a franchise that did things a little bit differently because they didn't have money. You could win without money. This year, the Athletics basically ruined the Astros' hopes of the playoffs, played amazingly through the end of the year, and they don't even really have a place to call home. That's baseball. Last night was game number 2 of the National League Championship Series. I bet on DraftKings the over-under for the first inning. I bet the over. I thought a run was going to be scored in the first inning, and the Brewers did jump out on Yamamoto in the first inning. And then that was it. They did absolutely nothing else. Yamamoto pitched a complete game. That first inning, allowing the home run, that was basically it. He allowed 2 hits besides the home run. He had 1 walk, 7 strikeouts. His playoff ERA after this game is now 1.83 through 3 starts. He is 2-1. Freddie Peralta on the other side, a pitcher the Brewers were absolutely relying on, pitched 5 2/3 innings, allowed 5 hits, 1 walk, struck out 4, but allowed 2 home runs and 3 earned runs. His ERA for the playoffs is 4.70, and he is 1-2. The next 3 games now, starting tomorrow, are all in LA. And the Brewers are now down 2-0. The Blue Jays are down 2-0. The Mariners were underdogs heading into this series. The Brewers were underdogs heading into this series. The Brewers' bats cannot get past the Dodger pitching. And the Blue Jays' bats cannot get past the Mariner pitching. I fully believe we are headed for a Dodgers and Mariners World Series. And it will be an outstanding World Series because the way that both teams are built. The Mariners were built for this. They were absolutely built for this. Very, very little of me thinks that it will not be at minimum 6, if not 7 game series. Baseball is a place where underdogs can really thrive because the variables are 9 players that bat. maybe one pitcher, maybe four pitchers in a game have to be on. The variables are so much, it can change everything. When you look at the league, so we're going to look at the league. The top 6 teams in the American League are the playoff teams: Blue Jays, Yankees, Mariners, Red Sox, Guardians, Tigers. Then you have the teams that miss the playoffs: Astros, Royals, Rangers, Tampa Bay Rays, Athletics, Orioles, Angels, Twins, and White Sox. The White Sox still got to 60 wins. Their over-under was actually, if I remember correctly, their over-under at the beginning of the year was like 54 on DraftKings. So they got the over. They did get the over. In the National League, the Brewers, Phillies, Dodgers, 1, 2, 3. Cubs, Padres, and Reds, 4, 5, 6. Missing the playoffs were the Mets, Giants, Diamondbacks, Marlins, Cardinals, Braves, Pirates, Nationals, and Rockies. Now, the Nationals do have a roster moving forward. They do have certain players. C.J. Abrams is a very good player. They do have players moving forward. And the thing about baseball is, it definitely could only take an off season. Alex Bregman already is opting out of his deal with the Red Sox. He'll be a free agent. Cody Bellinger opting out from the Yankees. He will be a free agent. That is huge. The MLB postseason to this point, the wild card series was much better. But the good news for Major League Baseball is currently the postseason viewership is at its highest since 2010. The 15-inning thriller between the Tigers and Mariners averaged 8.7 million viewers. Viewership this year for each game is averaging 4.3 million through the division series. That's a 30% increase from last year and the best since 2010. The game is quicker. I know, you're immediately going, hold it, but they just had a 15-inning game. But it was 15 innings, and it didn't take 7 hours. The game is quicker. It works. Baseball is set up very well. I do really hope that the players understand how important the negotiations for that bargaining agreement are. Those negotiations are vitally important. Yes, you have to protect yourselves, but you need to protect the future of the sport. The sport is more important than Bryce Harper's $300 million. If he has to cut back to $200 million, but the sport survives, that should be the focus. You will find out in the bargaining agreement at the end of next year how selfish these players want to be and whether or not they care about the sport even existing after they're done. That's what you'll find out. And next year, you're going to get a lot of propaganda from both sides, as to be expected. Not much of a surprise there. But baseball can turn in a season. The Braves were predicted to win the NL East. They were second to last. The only team behind them was the Nationals. They were below the Marlins, and they looked bad for a lot of the year. Now, they were injured. That starting pitching, they lost 3 starters. Like I said, I can't blame them. You lose 3 starting pitchers, it's hard. But the reality is, everything can change in a season. One off season. And for many teams, the offseason is starting now. Pitchers, the San Diego Padres pitcher actually resigned, so the Padres have an opening now as the manager. And that's an interesting thing because that was not expected. So we'll find out who gets that managing job. And we'll see what happens. All right, so let's jump to hockey. The new sport that I have been I'm looking forward to Wednesday night hockey tonight. Not going to lie, I'm looking forward to it tonight. Last night, these were the scores last night. The Toronto Maple Leafs beat the Nashville Predators 7-4. The Montreal Canadiens and the Seattle Kraken played an overtime thriller where Montreal won 5-4. The Edmonton Oilers blanked the New York Rangers 2-0. The Capitals moved to 3-1 on the year, beating the Lightning from Tampa Bay in overtime, 3-2. The Vegas Knights beat the Calgary Flames 4-2. Dallas Stars beat the Minnesota Wild 5-2. Carolina Hurricanes beat the San Jose Sharks 5-1. And the Anaheim Ducks beat the Pittsburgh Penguins 4-3. The games tonight, because that's what I am looking forward to. The games tonight on TNT. We have the Ottawa Senators against the Buffalo Sabres. That is on ESPN+. At 7 o'clock on TNT, the Florida Panthers and the Detroit Red Wings. And then on TNT at 9:30, we have the Chicago Blackhawks and the St. Louis Blues. And on ESPN+, it is the Calgary Flames and the Utah Mammoth. Looking at the standings for the year, we currently have, let's see. So the San Jose Sharks still have not gotten a win. The New York Islanders are 0-3, and the Buffalo Sabres are 0-3. Now the San Jose Sharks have lost in overtime twice, so they're actually 0-1 and 2. Remember, it's overtime losses also count in this. It's wins, losses, overtime losses, which play into the points. So they actually have 2 points, and they're not last place in their own division, which is really weird because they don't have a win. But that is how the points work. So currently we still have 3 winless teams: Buffalo Sabres, New York Islanders, and the San Jose Sharks heading into tonight. All right. In the NFL, just a quick note. Number 1, C.J. Gardner-Johnson just got cut by the Ravens. Legitimately 1 week, 1 week after he was signed. Not, I wish I was kidding. Actually, it was 1 week after he was signed. So, the Ravens need help, and evidently C.J. Gardner-Johnson isn't the answer. I don't know who is then, but evidently he's not it. All right, let's move over to here. All right, so as we look at a couple different things, where did it go? Where the heck did it go? There it is. Boom. So I was looking at all the spreads for this week, trying to figure out what my locks were going to be heading into this weekend. And I was really trying to just figure out, okay, how do I think these games are going to play out? I normally pick the big spreads. I don't normally like picking. I like 5.5 or higher is what I like doing, unless I'm going with the favorite. So this week, in the NFL, I am going to take one favorite as far as the spread is concerned, because I don't think the game's going to be particularly close. So this week, the Commanders are only a 1.5 favorite over the wonderful Dallas Cowboys. And the reality is, I don't think a point and a half is enough. So I am going to say that the Commanders absolutely cover and stomp all over the Cowboys. They're currently 1.5 point favorites. I don't think 1.5 is big enough. You can say it's kind of cheap. They're probably going to win by more than 1.5, even if it's a field goal. No, I think 1.5 is way too low. I don't see the Cowboys coming out, being able to play the game against the Panthers. Yeah, they play good at home, but I don't see their defense stopping anything about the Commanders. And I think the Commanders' defense are opportunistic enough that Prescott's not going to be outrageously comfortable. And if Lattimore can shut down Pickens, you kind of shut down the Dallas offense. So Commanders are going to be my pick there. Now, my lock for the week is also going to be the Titans. Now, I've done this before, and sometimes, I've hit with them. I have hit with them. They fire Brian Callahan. They have a home matchup against the Patriots, who have gotten victories over the Bills and the Saints in the last 2 weeks. We have seen this happen before. Teams that get a new coach, it happened with the Giants, teams that get a new quarterback. That's what happened with the Giants, by the way. I kind of rolled that together. We've seen it with teams that get a new coach. The Colts, the Raiders when they had Rich Bisaccia come in with the interim. And then we've seen it with quarterbacks. Jackson Dart comes in. Jacoby Brissett came in for the Cardinals last week and lit it up against the Colts. So we've seen this. 7.5 point underdog at home to the Patriots just seems like a lot. It just seems like way too much. I think the Titans play competitive. I think they play their best game potentially of the year. They may play the best game they play all year. And I think they'll galvanize for this game. And even if they lose, I don't see them losing by more than 7.5. I really don't. I think a 31-27 game is kind of what I feel like is going to happen. Titans also could win. I did put that in. The money line yesterday before it dropped, I did put in the Titans beating the Patriots yesterday. Just there's something about a new head coach. It's happened so many times, so I'm running with analytics. That's absolutely what I'm doing. Make no mistake about that. I am running with analytics here. But because of that, I think the Titans could win this one. I really do. So I'm going to go with Titans plus 7.5 against New England. And then my other one is going to be the Packers 6.5. And here's the thing, I don't know which team is starting or which quarterback is starting. But the Packers are 6.5 point favorites on the road against the Cardinals. If Jacoby Brissett is the starter, I don't see the Packers beating them by 6.5. The Cardinals played very well last week. Their defense plays better at home. I do think with Brissett, they play a little bit harder. Brissett didn't have any turnovers, didn't make those big mistakes. And I do believe the Cardinals will have an opportunity because the Packers on the road have just been flat. They're 3-0 at home. They're 0-1-1 on the road. There's a reality here. Away from Lambeau Field, Packers are just not that good. So 6.5 to me is too high of a number. So I am going with the Cardinals plus 6.5 against the Packers. Now, when we move to college football, last week I only got one of these right. College, I don't get with the Hawks locks, it's a little bit different because I normally end up picking giant spreads. So it's not necessarily the same. But this week we're going to pick a couple of the bigger spreads. Ole Miss and Georgia. This is a really weird game. Very weird game. Georgia at home is favored by 7.5. Now, I am not saying right now that Mississippi is going to win. But a 7.5 point in the SEC, we have seen this time and time again. Home or road, doesn't matter. These SEC games are just grudge matches. I feel like Ole Miss can play with Georgia, especially on the defensive side of the ball. And if that is the case, it is definitely going to be closer than 7.5. It easily could be a field goal. So my first Hawk lock for the week is going to be Mississippi plus 7.5 against Georgia. My other lock, I still don't understand the infatuation thinking that Alabama can score a bunch of points. It took multiple red zone interceptions with Vanderbilt for them to beat Vandy. It took Missouri, it was a field goal game against Missouri. And now you're going to have Tennessee coming in there as a 7.5 point underdog? Really? I know it's in Alabama, but let's be honest. This is not the Nick Saban Alabama. I love Kellen DeBoer. I think Kellen DeBoer is a very good coach. Do I think he's a great coach? No. I think he's a very, very, very good coach. Do I think he could win a national championship? Absolutely. But this is not that Alabama. And Tennessee and Alabama have some dogfights. They play hard. Alabama has holes. If Tennessee can run the ball, I think it opens their passing game. And you can throw on Alabama a good amount. You can really throw on Alabama. 7.5 points is too much. It's just too much. 7.5 points. The weather's supposed to be gorgeous down there. I'm going to take Tennessee plus 7.5. That's where I'm going with. All right. The next one I've got. This one I'm not as sure of. This one I am not as sure of. USC is a 9.5 point underdog on the road against Notre Dame. Here's why I'm not sure of it. It is supposed to be storming Saturday night. Wet, rainy. So the weather plays a factor into what I'm saying here. But USC as a 9.5 point underdog seems a little bit excessive when USC can throw the football pretty well. And they do it, they've also run the ball pretty decently. So I'm going with 3 spread picks, all of them 7.5 or higher. Mississippi against Georgia to cover, Tennessee against Alabama to cover, and USC against Notre Dame to cover. And yes, those are already locked in on my side. All right, 9:30, Hawks locks off. Here we go. Let's do our fantasy deep dive before we jump into fire, water, or ice. Move that off to the side, and here we go. So the fantasy deep dive for this week. I said last week I was coming for Slim. I wanted my lead back in total points in Thunder Sports. And by golly, George, I was on a mission. For those of you that wonder, do I take this personally? Absolutely. This is the official league of the podcast, Thunder Sports, the organization. And yes, I do. I take it very, very personally. All right, so opening up here, the best manager this week was Dab. He had a 99% accurate lineup. 127.8 is what he scored out of a max possible of 129. Skins, unfortunately, had the worst, only scoring 65% of their lineup. 134 was the max, and he scored 87. Biggest blowout. TJ absolutely whooped up on Homie, 120-47. It was a weird week in fantasy football. You saw it in the games. Some teams only threw the ball. Some teams only ran the ball. It was a very odd week. And that's what happens when you get an odd week. You get blowouts like that where it doesn't make any sense. The narrowest victory, though, was by basically 3 points, 69-66 is basically what it was. Highest score, yours truly. 144.4 this week. And Homie, unfortunately, the lowest score at 47.8. No, not that. This. There we go. Overachiever. I've been called worse in my life. I outdid my projection by 23%. Homie missed his projection by 49%. The best quarterback this week was Patrick Mahomes. 22 of 30, 257 yards, 3 touchdowns, 32 yards rushing, and a touchdown on the ground as well. The best running back, Bijan Robinson, 14 carries, 170 yards, a touchdown. He had a rush of over 40 yards, over 50 yards, and the touchdown of over 40 yards. Also had 6 receptions for 68 yards. Best wide receiver, Jackson Smith-Njigba, 8 receptions, 162 yards, a touchdown. He had a touchdown bonus of one that was over 40 and over 50 yards. Tanner McBride and Dallas Goedert played for the tight end of the week. Goddard was actually the better tight end, 9 receptions, 110 yards, and a touchdown. And then the defense of the week was the Los Angeles Rams, getting 20 points. Kicker of the week was Eddie Pinheiro from the 49ers, 4 of 4 from field goal range, 20-yard field goal, 40-yard field goal, 2 50-yard field goals, and an extra point. So that was what happened this week in fantasy. Now, as we get closer here, we are actually starting to creep in on what is the trade deadline in most leagues. And we're also creeping in on the trade deadline in the NFL. And as things take more and more shape, more and more things will start coming out. More and more potential moves will be coming out. I wanted to go through today because watching oh, hang on, we got to do the standings. Haha, I forgot to do the standings. There we go. All right. So, timeout, back up. So in the NFC, I now have 746 points in the league. I am now 5-1. Balls Deep is still right there on my freaking tail. He's also 5-1. JA is 4-2. Homie is 3-3. Carl's 2-4. Skins and Krusty are 1-5 and 33. Still currently winless. Now, if you go to the AFC, which is where we're going to go next, Slim has the lead, but he lost the points lead in the league. I am now up above him by 9 points. TJ is right behind him at 4-2. Big J is also 4-2. So is Jake from State Farm. Dravin, Browns, Clowns, and Dab are all 3-3. And going for a 5-peat is currently 1-5. So that is currently the standings for Thunder Sports. All right, here we go. So I've got this set up today. And we're really just going to be asking a very, very simple question. Fire, water, or ice? And we're going to go through some of the coaches. And I've got 10 coaches we're going to go through. And we're going to talk about whether their job is on fire, whether or not they're just treading water, or whether or not it's ice and they're solidified in their position and really with nothing to worry about. So I'm going to start with an odd one today. I am going to start with an odd one. I'm going to start with Sean McDermott. Sean McDermott, to me, right now, is only treading water. And you may be wondering, why? Why do I feel like he's only treading water? Well, I'm glad you asked. Because I think what's happening right now with the two losses that they've had in a row, I believe that ownership is looking at it a little bit closer. They know he was once again outcoached by Mike Vrabel. He's been outcoached by Andy Reid multiple times. And in a Sunday night game at home, he got outcoached by Mike Vrabel. He continues to get outcoached in the big games. Even Mike McDaniel on the Thursday night game kind of outcoached him. But the Bills were plenty good enough to get over that hump. Not the case the last 2 weeks. Now, Atlanta had a great game plan. And Atlanta looks good. But you are no longer first in the division. Because the Patriots beat you, because the Patriots have won 3 in a row, they are now first in the AFC East. I believe 150% Sean McDermott's job is basically just treading water right now. They're on bye week. He said it's a great chance to start over. Start over from what? You beat the Ravens, Jets, Dolphins, Saints. You lost to the Patriots and Falcons. When you come back from a bye, you have a road game against the Panthers, and then you have the Chiefs. Then you're at the Dolphins, and then you've got the Bucks and at the Texans. You don't have time to start over. You need to continue moving forward. You're going to be favored. Potentially in every single one of these games. The Chief game, you're home. It'll probably only be 1.5, but you're home. The Eagle game in week 17, you're home. You have all these games at home. You cannot lose what you have right now. It is vitally important for you to get going and stay going, and you cannot get outcoached. The Buccaneers, Todd Bowles cannot outcoach you. He's a defensive coach. DeMeco Ryans cannot outcoach you. Defensive coach. Sean McDermott's job is currently just treading water, but it could easily be fired very quickly. It could easily be fired very, very quickly. All right, next one. A coach that we thought may be on the hot seat at the beginning of the year. And I believe, due to how this year has gone, just through the first 6 games, his position is now in ice, and that is Shane Steichen. I believe Shane Steichen automatically is going to be brought back next year. They are 5-1. They have a plus 78 point differential. They're 4-0 in the conference. They're 4-0 at home. People love winning at home. Give our home fans a reason to show up. That's what this team is doing. So I believe right now, and I don't think, unless they collapsed and didn't win another game, barring a colossal collapse, I believe his job's ice. And I still think even with the collapse, if they don't make a move, the GM gets fired before he does. The GM gets fired before he does. So right now, I think Shane Steichen is definitely an ice. Their upcoming schedule, they've got the Chargers, then they're home against the Titans, at the Steelers, and then they have their cross the pond game against the Falcons before their bye week. And coming back from their bye week is vitally important. Those next 5 games are vitally important. Actually, shoot, it's the final 6. The final 6 games will determine where this team goes in the season. You come back from bye, you have Chiefs, Texans, Jaguars, Seahawks, 49ers, Jaguars, Texans. That's how you close out the year. So could it easily go sideways at that point in time? Yes. The Falcons can beat them. The Steelers in Pittsburgh, listen, the Colts and Steelers have, it's always a wild game. They should beat the Titans at home. That'll be after this week, so that'll be week 2 of a new coach, so they'll probably be back to sucking pretty bad. But the reality is they should go into their bye week with, excuse me, with no more than 3 losses, but probably 2. Probably 2 losses. So if they go 4-3 through their final 7 games, they'll end up 12-5. If they go 3-4, they'll end up 11-6. I think his job's an ice. I think he absolutely has that ability. All right. Another coach, beginning of the year, we weren't really sure which way this was going to go. And because of circumstances is the reason I feel the way I do now. Zach Taylor with the Bengals, I think, is on fire. And here is why. Joe Burrow doesn't like him. Joe Burrow is injured. Joe Burrow will probably talk to ownership about it. If Burrow requests a trade, don't put it out of the realm of possibility. Do not think that it couldn't happen. If Burrow requests a trade, I could see them firing Taylor, trying to get a more reputable coach in to help Joe Burrow. And I think Taylor's job, 2-4, yes, he's without Burrow. They have lost 4 in a row. They traded for Joe Flacco. I don't think that really helps them. We'll see how tomorrow night's game against the Steelers goes. Reality here is the Bengals are in trouble. And Zach Taylor just, it's not good. And he's the offensive guy. He's the offensive guy, and it's not good. It does not look good. So Zach Taylor, to me, is currently sitting on fire. Now, I'm going to kind of cheat, because like I told you, I had this one already done, and it already happened. So, quick synopsis. I had the Tennessee Titans, Brian Callahan, as on fire. Well, he was. He was definitely on fire. He's been fired officially. So there's 4. Not going to talk about that because we've already talked about what the interim coach is going to be doing this week. Okay. Another guy that I think right now is actually on fire due to how the season has played out, and I'm going to go Jonathan Gannon. I believe Jonathan Gannon is on fire, and I don't see how he's going to keep his job without a miraculous turnaround making the playoffs. No, you can't go 7-10. You have to make the playoffs. 7-10 isn't good enough. That doesn't cut it. I'm sorry. It doesn't. that does not cut it. We'll see how everything else plays out. But they got to do better. The loss against the Titans, I think, really hurt him. His side of the ball failing against the Colts when Jacoby Brissett throws for 320 yards definitely didn't help. They've lost 4 in a row. This team is in trouble. The Packers beat them. That'll be 5 in a row. They're last in their division. Niners, Seahawks, Rams are all 4-2. They are 2-4. They've been outplayed by every one of those last 4 teams. So I think Jonathan Gannon is on fire. Now, a guy that I think is still treading water, and I am so happy for him, is Brian Daboll. And I think because of Jackson Dart, with Dart, they are 2-1. This is kind of how I felt last year, Raheem Morris with the Kirk Cousins and Michael Penix situation. You started Kirk Cousins, you were winning. The minute he fell off, you should have replaced him. The Giants did. That Chiefs game was it. They were done after that. No more. They put in Dart. That right there is the difference. I do believe Dart could win a grand total of 6 games this year. It'll be hard. I'm not saying it won't be hard. But that team has a lot of confidence. They're 2-1 at home. Those 2 wins, Dart was starting. They're only a negative 23-point differential. They're on the road against the Broncos this week. They should lose this week. If they win, it'll be a huge win. They should lose this week. Then they'll be back home. Looking at their schedule, so let's go ahead and pull this up real fast. Looking at their schedule, they got the Broncos, at the Eagles, home against the Niners, at the Bears. Your games to win are going to be later in the year. At the Bears is definitely possible. The Niners are an up-and-down team, and that game's at 1 o'clock. So it's a California team in November coming from Cali to New York for a 1 o'clock kickoff. They could easily win against the Niners. But you close the year home against the Vikings, at the Raiders, home against the Cowboys. I do believe they have 4 more wins on this schedule. I absolutely could see Jackson Dart, Cam Skattebo doing what needs to be done to get 4 more victories, and you finish 6-11. And I still don't think they're going to be the worst team in their division. I think the Cowboys will be worse. So right now I do believe Brian Daboll is treading water. Joe Shea needs to be fired. They need a new general manager. But right now Brian Daboll is definitely treading water. Okay, another coach. Mike McDaniel is on fire. Mike McDaniel is absolutely on fire. You are currently 1-5. You have a negative 40-point differential. You're 1-2 at home, 0-3 on the road. You're already 1-2 in the division. Your only win is over the lowly Jets, which are the only team that's beneath you in the division. Currently the only winless team in the NFL. I don't really think we need to deliberate too much on this. It's very clear Mike McDaniel is not tough enough. He doesn't have the moxie to be a head coach. He doesn't have the wherewithal to manage an entire team of men. It's just not his position. I believe he is a good offensive coordinator, and I think anybody that is a defensive coach, Raheem Morris, I think could benefit from a guy like Mike McDaniel in Atlanta. I really do. I think a defensive coach like DeMeco Ryans could benefit from Mike McDaniel. There's multiple teams that could benefit from having Mike McDaniel come in and run their offense. So it's not that he doesn't have a place that he could go. There's definitely options for him as an offensive coordinator, but he's not a head coach. And we got to stop trying to make people The coaches, they're not. All right. We're actually going to go with the team that's right beneath them. Aaron Glenn of the New York Jets. As of right now, I think he's treading water. But it doesn't look great. They need to beat the Panthers this week. Garrett Wilson being out is definitely a blow. There's no doubt about that. They need to beat the Panthers this week, though. I mean, it is a dying need. They need to get their first win this week. If you ask me after this week and if they lose to the Panthers, I'd say he's on fire. I don't know if Woody Johnson has the ability to look long-term or not. Right now, I think he's treading water. He may be starting to sink, though. He easily may be starting to sink. I don't know. I thought it would look better. I don't know if he's got the right offensive coordinator. It could easily be a coordinator issue where it's just. Remember last year with the Falcons? You knew the team was okay with Raheem Morris, but he hired that huge staff and he hired him going, we know we're going to get picked from a lot, so we hire a big staff so that when people get taken away, we've already got the people there to replace them. A little bit of arrogance. You're not Sean McVay. The Jets kind of feel like they just didn't get the right coordinators. They didn't get the right fit for what the Jets are. Now, he's trying to build a new culture, and I get that. But I really did. I expected it to be better. I really did. I expected it to be better. All right. Next team. We got two more, and then we close this out for the day. Nick Sirianni is treading water. He is not in ice. Nick Sirianni is treading water. You are 4-2 after a Super Bowl winning season, but here's the problem. Ownership knows this. Without the perfect coordinator, you are bad at this. The offense has regressed badly. Vic Fangio is still a really good defensive coordinator. You have regressed very badly on offense. Drama is all back on the offense. People are talking. Your leadership and game management is once again coming into question. You're treading water again. This is the same year. This is the year after Steichen, the year Jason Kelce retired. I watched that game against the Buccaneers where they just bulldozed the Eagles and manhandled them. Then he gets Kellen Moore, and Kellen Moore gets the offense going. And they look good, and they go win the Super Bowl. Kellen Moore takes the head coaching job with New Orleans, and you're back needing to be the head coach, and you can't do it. So in my opinion, Nick Sirianni is basically just treading water right now. He's not in ice and he's not on fire. But how this season plays out will affect the heat that is on him heading into next year. Yeah, he just won a Super Bowl, but I said it. He's one of the 5 worst head coaches to win a Super Bowl. It wasn't because of him. He's proving it right now. This team has got all the talent in the world. They just lost on the road to the Giants. He got outcoached by Brian Daboll. He's been outcoached by Sean Payton, Matthew Stafford. He gets outcoached all the time. Come on. Stop making excuses. He almost got outcoached opening night. They almost lost to the Cowboys opening night. For gosh sakes. So right now, Nick Sirianni treading water. And the last coach we're going to talk about today is One that I can't believe I'm putting on here is John Harbaugh. Now, I trust the Ravens organization. I really do trust the Ravens organization. But I will say that as of right now, John Harbaugh's job is on fire. And I say that because of this. The effort on the team needs to be better when they come back from the bye. The effort on the team needs to look crisper. The game plan needs to look better. Whether Lamar Jackson is there or not, you cannot look completely inept. The Lions, with all their injuries last year, only lost one game. And you go, well, that's really hard to do. Yeah, it's really hard to do. That's why it was so dang impressive. All those players, all those defensive players on injured reserve, they still only lost one game. You're the Baltimore Ravens with Lamar Jackson, Derrick Henry, a good offensive line, solid tight ends, decent receivers. You're 1-5. You've lost 4 in a row. You have been outscored by 50 points. Your point differential is -50. John Harbaugh right now, his job is on fire, and it's going to depend on how the rest of this season plays out. Can he get back? Can he be relatively 500 and finish 7-10 on the year after the bye week? Can they be competitive in these games? That's what I need to know. Can they be competitive coming back from the bye week? All right. So just to recap, I've got Sean McDermott with the Buffalo Bills currently treading water, but unfortunately that could change. I got Shane Steichen with the Colts currently in ice, solidifying his ability to come back next year due to the hot start that they have had. Zach Taylor with the Bengals, I believe, is on fire because of how, they've lost 4 consecutive games. They don't look good. They don't even look competitive in most of these games. The Titans already fired Brian Callahan. Jonathan Gannon with the Cardinals is on fire. I believe Brian Daboll with the Giants is treading water right now. And I think if Dart can win 4 more games, he will retain his job because the promise with Jackson Dart for next year will be there. And I think he deserves the opportunity. Mike McDaniel with the Dolphins is absolutely on fire. There's not enough water down there in the ocean to be able to put that fire out. He will be done. For the Jets, Aaron Glenn is currently treading water, but it can go downhill fast. He needs to get a victory this weekend over the Panthers. Nick Sirianni treading water as well. That ownership is not going to stand for a lackluster coach. You won a Super Bowl, but you've proven before that, after that, and once again, after that, that you just can't coach unless your coordinators are A-plus coordinators. So right now he's treading water. And then John Harbaugh with the Ravens, I think, is currently on fire. He needs to put that out with a solid showing in the second half of the season. And that's where we're at. All right, guys, this is Wednesday. Tomorrow we start looking at the previews for the weekend. And we do a couple of other things. Reality is we are almost done with this week. Wednesday's done. Wednesday is done. So make it the best Wednesday that you freaking possibly can. We got hockey tonight. I will be watching. Absolutely. We got hockey tonight. And then we'll talk about the football previews heading into week 7 of the NFL and week 8 of college football tomorrow. And I've got the stats for you for running versus throwing and what it actually does. All right, guys, as always, I deeply appreciate it. Make sure to like, subscribe, share the podcast with a friend, and I thank you ever so much. Have a great rest of your Wednesday. Make it the best one you can. For Sports Talk with Hawk, I am Hawk, and I'm out. Have a great afternoon.